Hello there and welcome. This is Mikhail or Michael speaking, and as always, before the video starts, I want to use this opportunity to say thank you all who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal, or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your generosity, so thank you friends, and have a blessed day. Now, today's video I will start with discussing the situation around currently Ukrainian-controlled town of Avdeevka, where the Russian offensive continues as I speak. First, let's touch the situation on the northern flank, near Russian-controlled village of Krasnogorovka. In the last 24 hours, Russian forces conducted many offensive operations from the waste heap that they've captured in the direction of Avdeevsky coke plants, in the direction of Ukrainian-controlled Novokalinove, fight it all along this rail line in attempt to expand their zone of control around it, by attacking in the direction of both the factory and along the rail line, here to the north of Stepove, and also continued to fight in attempt to gain more control along this rail line that is located in between Novokalinove and Krasnogorovka. When it comes to the territorial changes, Russians were able to advance ever slightly here in this area and capture about this much territory from the Ukrainian side, so as you can see both the tree lines and the rail line along them. With it came the first news that Russians started attacking in the direction of Stepove. Now, mostly this is the Russian sources that claiming that. They also claim that currently Russian forces are slowly advancing in this area, while mostly using artillery and FPV drones to squeeze out Ukrainians from their positions within the village with the most minimum risk. With the attacks in the direction of Stepove, Russians also increased their pressure here in this area, currently fighting around this particular portion of the front, where it would seem a village was once located, but judging by the photos from satellite, it was abandoned a long time ago. Currently, Russians are fighting towards this portion of the rail line, and here on the video you can see that happening. As you can see, Russians are now mostly using tanks. They roll up as close to the front line as possible and open fire on the Ukrainian positions, trenches and strongholds across the open fields, slowly but surely destroying these defensive fortifications. Usually soon after, Russian infantry fighting vehicles are entering the scene as they deliver troops to the front line so they can start the clearing operation of recently bombarded Ukrainian positions. Then from here let's move to the southern flank of Avdeevka and also discuss the situation here, where Russians attacked from the settlement of Apitne across the open fields in attempt to gain control over multiple tree lines and trenches and strongholds located within them. The Russian attacks also came from the settlement of Vadiane in the direction of Severnaya, and Russians continued fighting within Vadiane settlement in the direction of Pervomaisky, as well as attacked Ukrainian positions along E50 highway from the settlement of Pisky. When it comes to the territorial change, it would seem that Russians were able to advance here ever slightly, capturing a set of trenches and a stronghold located here on this road intersection. This is how much territory they were able to recover as a result of those successful offensive operations. As you can see, Russians still have a long way to go to the Avdeevka settlement itself, however are slowly getting closer and closer to the settlement of Severne. From here let's move to the Vuhlidar sector, where both Ukrainians and Russians became very active in the last few days, and as a result of that, there are several territorial changes to report. First things first, it is important to note that the Russian forces attacked across this open field in attempt to increase their zone of control around Mykolsky village and advance in the general direction of 0532 highway. They also attacked from the settlement of Pavlivka. However, these attacks were met with Ukrainian counterattacks, and Russians were unable to advance here in this portion of the front. Ukrainians also attacked in between the two settlements of Pavlivka and Mykolaivka in attempt to disrupt communication along this side of reservoir, and as a result of that counterattack were able to advance within the dachas near the dam and capture this portion of the front. The Russians, on the other hand, were successful at advancing from the settlement of Mykolske, and as a result of successful offensive operations conducted in the last few days, were able to capture about this much territory from the Ukrainian side. Now, whether this is a restart of the operation in attempt to capture Vuhlidar or part of a diversion so that Ukrainians would be forced to relocate some of their troops, for example, from the Novomikhailivka sector or Vremivka tactical bridgehead, is unclear. but I will pay closer attention to this front now and will surely report if anything interesting happens here. Let's quickly discuss the situation on the Velika Novosilka sector or Vremivka tactical bridgehead. Generally speaking, the fighting mostly now continues around Приютное and Заветно Бажание settlements, as both Ukrainians and Russians are constantly attacking and counter-attacking each other all across the left flank of the bridgehead, and despite the intense actions, there are no territorial changes to report as the time of recording. Then let's visit Zaporozhian fronts, or to be more specific, Orikhiv direction, where Ukrainian forces continued their offensive operations in the general direction of Novoprokopivka, Verbovo, and the settlement of Kampani. In my last video, I reported and showed you an attack conducted by Russian BTR unit along this force line. At that time, I didn't know the result of this attack, and overall it would seem that it wasn't successful, as recent geolocated footage suggests that Ukrainians were able to not only hold on to this tree line, but slightly expanded the zone of control around it. Here you can see that reflected on this picture. As you can see, currently both Ukrainians and Russians bugged down into positional style warfare with minimum to no advances. Currently Ukrainians are going through rotation here in this area, and here on this video you can see example of that happening. Unfortunately, due to the infantry present in the video, I have to censor this portion of it, but don't worry, the rest of the video would be perfectly fine. Here on the video you can see Ukrainians currently in rotation as they load into infantry fighting vehicle. Russians spotted them with their reconnaissance groups, waited long enough, and then struck down this armored piece. Now the fate of the Ukrainian soldiers inside the vehicle is unclear, but as you can see, the missile hit it in the turrets right above infantry compartment, which can be deadly with the right kind of ammunition. Ukrainians also advanced ever slightly here near the Dragon Teeth and anti-tank ditch fortification right in front of Russian main trench line, and as a result of that, increased their zone of control within this tree line. Here in this picture you can see exactly how much territory Ukrainians were able to capture from the Russians in the last 24 hours. Those small territorial gains obviously came with a cost, and here on this video you can see Ukrainian column of infantry fighting vehicles coming under fire by the Russian ATGM crews. Here you can see one of 4 vehicles being hit and bursting into flames. With this I end today's video. Hopefully it was informative enough and was to your liking. If it was, please consider supporting this video by any means you consider necessary. I would really appreciate that, and it would help promote this video to a wider audience and help this channel's growth. Thank you in advance. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.